Leftist narrative crumbles as Pelosi attacks suspect's ex-partner reveals his political beliefs. Now we know since this thing first popped off, they were trying to say this guy was some white right-wing extremist. Where we don't some QAnon or whatever, and all this other stuff they try to put on this guy, but he really was just some guy that has some mental health issues more than likely. Who knows what really his issues is, but the narrative now is really different now that we got some people that actually know this guy speaks to what he really believes or his ideology. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Now, when you hit that alarm bell, you can change it from personal to all. That way, you get all the notifications for when I put out new stuff, because I put out stuff sporadically. Also, check my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon where I talk about things I can't talk about here. And there's also a link to my Instagram where I put out even more news that'll keep you informed. All right, let's talk about this news. From the moment the story broke on October 28th that Paul Pelosi had been attacked in the San Francisco home he shares with his wife Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House and the third most powerful person in the country, the left was determined to tie the incident to Republicans and the January 6, 2021 Capitol incursion. In a speech Wednesday, President Joe Biden tried to draw that line, saying, quote, the assailant entered the home asking, where's Nancy, where's Nancy? Those were the very same words used by the mob when they stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th. Sadly, for Biden and the Democrats at least, this has been a rather difficult case to make as it becomes more and more apparent that accused Pelosi attacker David DePape's well-documented life history shows that he is a raging leftist. I mean, what right person on the right does some of the things that he does? If the fact that he's a nudist activist and appears to live in a stereotypical Berkeley hippie community that is adorned with Black Lives Matter and LGBT pride signs don't already have us raising our eyebrows, the assurance of his former partner that he's, quote, always been progressive only makes the official narrative more difficult to believe. I mean, common sense would tell you that this guy is definitely not a alt-right person. DePape's ex-partner, Oksane Gypsy Tube, however you pronounce her name, spoke about him in an interview with KGO TV from prison, where she is serving a 20-year sentence for stalking and attempting to abduct a 14-year-old boy with whom she became infatuated in 2018. She too is, quote, a well-known nudist activist, according to the report Sunday. Taub told KGO she and DePape were both staunch progressives. Quote, well, when I met him, he was only 20 years old and he didn't have any experience in politics, and he was very much in line with my views, and I've always been very progressive, she explained when asked whether he had ever shown animosity toward politicians. Quote, I absolutely admire Nancy Pelosi, she added. Told also said DePape had once gone missing for a year, and when he returned home had been deranged and paranoid. Quote, he came back in very bad shape. He thought he was Jesus. He was constantly paranoid, thinking people were after him, she said. Quote, and it took a good year or two to get back to, being halfway normal. He is mentally ill. He has been mentally ill for a long time, said Taub, a woman who fell in love with a teenager and tried to abduct him when she was in her late 40s. That was the company DePape kept. Also consider the fact that a Democratic state senator who once suggested mandatory drag shows for children admitted he knew of the alleged Pelosi attacker. Quote, I've been aware of him for a long time, California Senator Scott Wiener said of DePape in an interview with KGO last week. Quote, he was associated with the public nudity folks in Castro, Wiener explained, referring to San Francisco famed Castro District, a hub of LGBT activism and community for decades. Now, again, ask yourself what right wing person in their right mind would live in a place like this. Be honest. The left is so dishonest when it comes to a lot of things, but this in particular. Weiner, clearly up to date on the party line about the Pelosi attack, however, declared that DePape had, quote, clearly just gotten brainwashed by QAnon since his days of demonstrating for public nudity in a neighborhood known for his drag queens and bondage fetish fashion. Quote, but he clearly in recent years got completely brainwashed by right-wing conspiracy theories about anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, QAnon kind of stuff, the state senator said, and that is absolutely what led him to target Speaker Pelosi. Where did they get this stuff from? Does anyone really believe this? The Democrats have been determined to tie the Pelosi attack to QAnon and supporters of former President Donald Trump, but at absolute best, they are framing a suspect with apparent mental illness. Neither his eccentric nudist activism nor his supposed drastic switch to right-wing conspiracy theories can be taken as evidence that his ideas were grounded in rational thought, much less the rhetoric of either political party. At worst, in reality, the Democrats jumped all over the incident to suit their political narrative of right-wing violence just days before the midterm elections, and the narrative is just not matching up with the facts, and they do this stuff all the time. From questions about the Pelosi's security to inconsistencies in the 911 dispatcher's account to reports about DePape, there are many factors in this story that just don't add up, and I spoke of many of those. This is certainly a fitting example for us just days before the midterms of how the Democrats have been gaslighting the American people for years. Look at everything they've been gaslighting us on. They just tell us when we see a border crisis that it's really just white supremacy, abortion restrictions are anti-women, patriotism is racist, protecting children from pornography in schools is bigoted, and if they lose in the 2022 elections, it will be due to deranged QAnon sleeper agents like the progressive nudist activist David DePape. You might be able to get a lot of attention with such a narrative, but as the American people will probably show up in mass to tell the Democrats on Tuesday, you can't run a country like this, and it's going to be a reckoning. Again, I believe in a red wave. There's only one way this red wave don't happen. I think y'all know what would happen. What I believe what would happen if, for some reason, the Democrats do win this. Check out my Patreon where I talk about some of this stuff, and check out democrapublics.com for the latest in news. And leave your comments down below. Until next time, peace.